Hi, y'all. I feel like I can say that because I'm in Austin.
I know.
I'm Elaine Welteroth, and this is Cleo Wade. And believe it or not, we are not the same person. But we are from the same tribe, and that is what we are here to talk about, is tribe building, both online and in real life. And I think our friendship and our sisterhood is a good example of that. But before we take you through our sort of URL to IRL love affair, we want to sort of break down a couple of the terms that we're going to be talking about today. And two of them are micro and macro connections. So, and just to take one step back, I mean, we all know that in 2018, we've never been more consumed with our phones, with the 24/7 news cycle. We've never felt more connected through social media and through the internet. But research tells us that we've also never been so disconnected from ourselves and from each other, more depressed, more anxious, and more isolated. And so this concept of community building and tribe building, as we like to call it, has never been more important. So to kick off, Cleo, why don't you break down what the difference is between a micro and a macro connection and why they're both so important?
So what's so important to remember is that one is not better than the other, and we're not here to tell you to get offline to fix your lives or get online to fix your lives. It's the point of why we're here is to talk about the ways that we feel that we've been able to optimize our connectivity in different spaces. So it's actually more about what is the right place and the right time for the right type of connection. So we've found that micro connections, which take up less of your attention span and it takes less energy from you, is done really well online. It's an amazing place for announcements, for sharing, but it is much more difficult. It's not impossible to have macro connections online, but it's much more difficult to have that really compassionate moment that comes when you can look at someone in the eyes and have that moment of empathy. And so for us, we found that the balance of having our micro connections online and our macro connections offline has been what has been so crucial in how we've been able to build the tribes of people who support our mission and the things that we believe in. And it's also been an incredible organizing tool. So when we actually want to go out into the world and actually live, beyond the click and get something done, that's usually when we know we need to enter the macro connectivity space. And that happens best when we sit down IRL. And I think I might, and I think also that what we've talked about a lot is how one leads into the other so well. And I think I'm gonna start by telling them about our love story, because we knew we loved each other through our micro interactions. So I remember so vividly the day Elaine's name popped into my email. And I was like, oh my God, I love her. And then I was like, I don't know her. But I knew that I loved her because we were able to have micro exchanges, even if it just meant I like that photo when I see it. I like that, that when you're putting your makeup on in the back seat of the car and you're running late to everything and your hair and everything about it. And then not only that, you also get to see, especially the people like you who are so amazing at sharing really what you go through in your online space. And so I was also able to just see this woman have all of these triumphant moments and represent people of color in the most incredible way and root for women in a way that I so admired. And so it was so funny because in that email, I mean, usually if someone's emailing you and you don't know them, you're just like, hi, yeah, sure, maybe we should set up a call. But instead I was like, hey, Queen, do you want to come over for dinner? We'd never met. We'd never even talked on the phone. We'd never anything. I just knew her through through the internet. I was like, but I knew that we belonged together.
And we had work to do together.
Right, and that we had work to do together. And I think that's why you slid into my email too.
That is. Well, I asked for a tea, and what I asked for was a call.
Yeah.
You offered a tea, and then very quickly, as I was running late, which I tend to do.
Because of the tea is at 5, but then you're like, okay, but it's 6:30. Wait, hold on, I'm gonna be there at 7:30. I'll be there at 8. I was like, should I just order dinner or?
And she ordered dinner, and I ended up at her house, and we had this incredible conversation that has led to much more than a friendship. It's led to a sisterhood. It has led to us coming together as partners in work, and we've been able to create a community or amplify a community around us because of this connection that started on the internet. And I just think it's so specific to this time that we're living in. You know, 20 years ago, it was so much harder to find people that you could identify with. And when you think about it from a place of like just representation, if you were a young queer kid in the middle of Texas, or a black girl at an all-white school in New England, you had to really search for anyone that you felt a sense of connection to, or somebody who would understand your plight or care about what you care about. And as we know, magazines and media in general have done a poor job historically of representing people, others, you know, people who are not centered in mainstream storytelling. So the idea that now social media allows us to see these influential people who care about things we care about and share their stories and are proud of their identities is kind of game-changing. And you know, so Cleo and I have our first opportunity to kind of partner started with Teen Vogue. We did this poem. She did a poem for Teen Vogue. It was a Mad Lib, and then we thought, there's more to do. Like, we have to do more together. So we decided to organize a poetry slam, which is very like analog in a digital world.
I remember thinking like it was pouring rain. Do you remember that? And it was also in the
pouring
middle of like Herald Square, which is like a part of New York that if you live there, like you're not trying to go there. Like on a Saturday in the pouring rain, and I was like, oh my God, no one's gonna show up. Like, and it was an in-store. It was like, where was it? It was at like
Urban Outfitters.
And I was like, no one's gonna show up. Like, I don't know, Elaine. Like at the last minute, I was like afraid to get out of the car. And then when we walked in, we had like hundreds of kids, and I was like, no, I don't even know if people are into poetry or expressing themselves in these ways. And when
the kids came out.
And the kids came out in the rain, and they stayed late, and they read poems.
Yeah.
And I think that was also one of the first times that we realized that, you know, this, and what they were so grateful for was that we created not only a safe space for them, but a brave space for them. It was a space where there were so many people who read a poem or expressed themselves in a way where they said, this is the first time I've done this. And they were, you know, on college campuses where there were poetry nights and spaces for that, but because that wasn't the space where they felt like their tribe would be, they didn't feel brave enough to come out in that space. And so that's when I first realized that. I was like, wow. And it's one of those things where it's like when you say things to people online, and that's the other thing about the micro-connectivity of the online world, is that when you say it, you don't know how it's being received. Like, you don't hear someone say, yes, I'm gonna go to that, or like, oh, I feel that, I get that. Like, it kind of feels like you just throw it out into the world. And so especially when we threw out that invitation, I was like, are they gonna come? And when they did, we realized that there's just so much. It was so crucial that to really build the movement of you know, these spaces where people can be themselves and celebrate themselves and heal, we had to, you know, take it offline as well to make it as powerful as possible.
And it's something that I saw every day at Teen Vogue. I mean, young people are more connected than any of us. You know, like, this is their third arm. We know that. They live and breathe, sleep with this. So do I, and that's why I'm a millennial on the stage holding my notes in my phone. But what we found in building an intentionally inclusive community with the platform at Teen Vogue was that it started with, like, first of all, cleaning up our community and being really intentional about the safe space we wanted to create online for kids who felt different. And we wanted to kind of retrain them and reset the expectations for what they came to Teen Vogue for. You know, we wanted to make sure that they started to come to us for more than just fashion and beauty and celebrity news, but also conversations about politics and you know, how to get involved with movements that they cared about. And we made an assumption going in, not knowing that this would work, that there's enough people out there, young people out there, who care about the state of the world and want to participate. And so it was a leap of faith to just start creating content for an audience that we didn't really have any data to support existed.
And to celebrate all of yourself. I think the thing I
the
love so much about,
yeah,
it's like, but it's also, you know, that you could, like, I think I said this when we did a talk together last night, and I was saying, someone's like, I like your shoes because I was wearing these really sparkly shoes. And they're like, and I was like, yeah, you know, sometimes people think that you like can't be deep and also wear a sparkly shoe, but right. I think that was also so what I felt, and why I think I would have gone through so fewer identity crises in my life had I had a platform like Teen Vogue to also represent every aspect of my girlhood and womanhood and my cares and concerns, but also my like joys and simple pleasures.
Totally. So would I. I feel like as women, we are always told to check a box. Like, you're either stylish or you're smart. You're either powerful or you're fragile.
Yeah.
Like,
you're a feminist or you like trap music.
Right, exactly. And we all know, like, we care about the best bronzer. We listen to Bieber.
Yeah.
But, you know, we also care about Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
And so the first step for us was creating an online community that was safe to have all of these conversations in an intersectional way in one place. And we realized, like, very quickly that there was a craving for that representation, and there was a craving for that kind of content. But once we were able to cultivate this community, which was an incredible, beautiful, socially conscious community of young people, we were like, this is not enough. We have to find ways to like galvanize this community and convene them in real life. And again, a leap of faith. You don't know until you build it if they're gonna come. It's like kind of having a birthday party and inviting folks. You're always like, no one's gonna come, no one's gonna come, no one's gonna come. But time and time again, whether it was with, you know, what we were able to do together, or with what we did with Teen Vogue Summit, the young people showed up in droves because there is this sense that we are so hyper-connected online and in these micro ways that there is a craving for going deeper. And so if you are an individual or a brand or an influencer, you have the power, you have the influence to use your platform to convene the people who share the values that you have, and if you build it, they will come. And one example I just need you to tell the people about, which is just so amazing, and I feel like you need to do it in Trump's America, because we need it now more than ever. But you tell them about the time that you set up like what would look like a lemonade stand, but it was really about it was really about asking people if they are okay. Can you please tell them about this? This is incredible.
Well, yes, but you know, first the thing that really strikes me about what you did at Teen Vogue too was I feel like when you decided who you were in the online space, you also cleaned house in the personal space. And I thought that what was so amazing about being someone who got to visit the Teen Vogue offices and know so much about the team is that you were like, everyone needs to live it. And I think that was also so crucial in authentically translating who that tribe was. Because like when you go in that office, the people who are on your team who are writing those things, like they ride or die for the issues, they care, they're like, and I thought that surrounding yourself by the people who live it, and Maya Angelou used to always say it's like really easy to write the words, it's a lot harder to live the words. And I think that that's also something that as you are building your own tribe or figuring out how to speak to these people, it's so much more, it's so important to live it, because then when you do get to this space of the macro connections, it's so much easier to connect. And I always love like when people meet Elaine, because like she is exactly what she seems to be, and she's actually just even better. And so it's so exciting. And like every time I see like
Cleo.
Young girls around you, they're always like they're like, oh my God, you are like this. We are doing a boomerang, you know. And I so love that you live it and you build and you build that in your teams.
Thank you.
Last summer, I did this, I was inspired by Lucy from the Peanuts, and I created this booth called the Are You OK booth, and I put it in this park in downtown New York, and it was free, peaceful, and loving conversation. And again, it was one of those things, and I think that's also the fear and anxiety we don't talk about tribe building, is that you are always afraid no one's gonna show up. And so I remember when I did it, I announced on my Instagram the day before, and I think it was also like raining a little bit that day too, I don't know. But, and I set up the booth and I was like, I don't know, like, are people gonna be into this? Are they just gonna think it's weird? And I had to line the entire day in the rain in New York on a Saturday. And what was so incredible about it was that I realized that you're so much better at, I'm so much better at the writing, the better I am at the listening. And so also, like, what's so crucial about when you are building this tribe and this mission to do good work in the world, and especially in this time where we so desperately need it, you realize that it's more important than ever to also be in a listening space with your tribe. And the things that I found out about the work, it informed my work so much. It informed my mission so much. It informed just how much I was able to walk into any of the people I collaborate with and say, like, no, like, I'm telling you, like, this is what young people are thinking. Like, this is, like, I know the amount of girls that came to me that day and said, like, you know, I just never thought that, I thought that I'd have this sense of relief when I had my first job. And I realized I just never thought I wouldn't be happy, because the goal was always to get the job. And then she's like, and then I don't know how to be happy in the job. And I was like, well, have you tried resetting the goal? To finding that the happiness within the work, or looking for happiness and not the job, mistaking the job with happiness. I remember the young Latina queer girl who came and said, you know, there's no space for me in the world. And she said, and so I have a really hard time with relationships, because love is such a big thing. And if you've been told your entire life that there's no space for you, how could you think you deserve something that big? And I was like, and there was no space where I could have really understood that as thoroughly as I was able to that day without bringing it offline. And then what's so amazing about that is that when you do the work of activating your community through micro connections online, you're such a better storyteller. Like, you're so much better at getting that point across. And I think that was something that has really also helped me when it comes to how I speak to my tribe. Like, and we talk about this a lot, where you know, when shit hits the fan, which is like every day, it's probably happening right now as we're in here. It's really, we both take a beat of, like, we take a moment of self-care before we address anything. And I love that you take time to, like, feel it. You know, Elaine will just take like 2 weeks to feel something, have a cry about it, and be like, okay, I'm ready to talk about it. And I always make sure that, you know, I use any of my media as a tool and not a weapon. And so, but when anything is happening, and if I'm going to speak to any issue, I always make sure that I take that breath and say, like, okay, is what I'm about to say going to be helpful? Or am I just energetically dumping, and for the sake of my own personal therapy, I feel like I'd like to get in a group? And I think that the more you understand others, the more you understand how to speak to them and how important it is not to just energetically dump or ask them for that therapy, because the suffering that people are going through is so intense, and we're in such dire need of healing. So I know, I'm like crying, I'm like emotional. I don't know, I just looked at Elaine and I was like, we're in such need of healing.
And your work is healing people. I mean, who would have thought that in 2018, a poet could be, first of all, profitable.
Okay.
But also someone that young girls, older women, men, people of all backgrounds flock to. And it wouldn't have been possible without social media. So for better or for worse, we have to recognize the power that we bring to this platform. And you've brought such incredible intention and art and love to your platform, and that is why people are now buying your book. It used to be the other way around. You had to become a New York Times bestselling author and sell hundreds of thousands of books before, you know, people cared about the person. And people have followed you because your words are literally like an IV drip every day. People come to your platform to just get healed in little ways. And so now you have a book. She has a book. Everyone.
I have a book.
Just came out last week. I can be her shameless promoter.
Yeah.
And so yeah, the idea of healing and using your platform for good all circles back to this idea that is, I mean, the term is so overused. It's as overused as disruptor, but authenticity. It would mean nothing if you weren't practicing what you preach, if you weren't doing the work to be the person who could come up with these amazing, like, hymns, essentially, that you share with the world. And to circle back to one of the other points you made about like cleaning up the community, specifically for me, the example that I was using is at Teen Vogue. You're absolutely right that we had to clean house. Like, I think that for brands that are now thinking about how to position themselves or reposition themselves in a moment like this, which is so singular, and there's so many movements happening, it's sort of like, what side should we be on? What should we say? How far is too far to go? And we all know that there will be a moment of reckoning. In like 20 years, we're all going to look back to this moment in 2018 and say, what did we do? Mm-hmm. What did I do? Was I on the right side of history, or was I on the wrong side of history? Was I on the right side of history, but I was too afraid to be vocal about that? Was I too afraid or too confused about how to use what influence I had to make a difference? And so at Teen Vogue, we had that sort of moment of reckoning years ago. About 2.5 years ago. I think we could like feel Trump coming. Sorry, I know I shouldn't get all political, but we all kind of came together and said, there's white space here. We don't feel like we're doing enough. We don't feel like we're having meaningful enough connections with this incredible audience that's following us, and we can do better. But it required us all to look in the mirror. It required us to have hard conversations internally. On everything from politics to cultural appropriation, and also to bring in new voices. You know, you cannot change the stories unless you change the storytellers. And that's something that's so important to really grasp, because if you change the message, but you are not coming from an authentic place, it is not going to land. And I've seen that as a content creator, as an editor, as a writer for years. I'm sure you've seen that as well as a poet. But my mom always says, she says, what comes from the heart touches the heart. And so you have to do the work first before you can come to your tribe and build something that is sustainable or worthwhile for them to enter into, or to activate them. Yeah.
I always say that activism is organized storytelling. And
Ooh,
so
I love that.
That's
a
why,
tweet.
So that's why I think the stories are so important. And to me, there's like 3 pillars of storytelling, and it's authenticity, bravery, and vulnerability. If those 3 things are holding up your story, then the story works. But I'm interested, like, what do you think was like one of the kind of game-changing stories that really got your, like, really just got, like, where you felt that shift of that awakening in your Teen Vogue audience and in your Elaine tribe?
It's such a good question. So I definitely have to say it was one story at a time, one hire at a time, one hard conversation at a time. So it does not happen overnight. And I think, like, you know, authenticity is extremely important, but so is consistency. So in order for us to build this tribe, or for me to build a tribe, we had to make a decision to mean something more. We had to determine what that something more was going to be, and then we had to commit to that path. And for better or for worse, it's sort of like starting a new skincare routine for my ladies in here. It's like, you know, you like see an amazing commercial, you try it once, you buy the expensive product, you try it like once or twice or for a week, and you're like, this doesn't work. You put it back on the shelf. You're not going to see results. Like, as you know, whether you're a content creator or just an individual, if you want to make an impact, you have to be consistent, whether you're seeing your tribe come immediately or not. And so for us, I felt like we were sort of working quietly in the dark for a while. And we were slowly cultivating this sort of different audience. And we were doing a lot of social listening, looking at what people were saying online and how they were reacting to the stories that we were telling. But it wasn't until, there were a couple of big stories that were kind of game-changing. One would be a story that we did around cultural appropriation, but we wanted to contribute something positive to the conversation. We wanted to push the conversation forward. We wanted to bring more people into the conversation with the intention of helping to solve this problem, helping people to hear each other on both sides of this debate, this great debate that's been going on season after season, especially after Fashion Week is when people get really vocal about seeing it on runways. So we decided we were going to talk about it from the lens of cultural appreciation. And all of these groups who feel underrepresented in the media are angrily sort of creating backlash online because it's about more than the hoops or the baby hairs. Yeah. It's about a lack of representation, a lack of being heard and seen and understood. And there's a historical context that most people don't understand. So we were like, why don't we just ask girls from these underrepresented groups who are real girls to come and tell their story and be shot in a Teen Vogue elevated fashion shoot. So rather than appropriating the baby hairs from an inner city on a model who is white and going to be on the red carpet runway, why don't we, and like calling that fashion, but calling it on the street something different, why don't we just elevate the origin of this look and make it fashion and validate it on the pages of Teen Vogue? And also hand the mic over to the girl who's been hurt by the cultural appropriation and to have her explain what the difference is between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation. And it was just this aha moment for us where it was like, we were scared to tackle this topic. We have been accused of cultural appropriation time and time again. Who are we to broach this issue as the authority on like how to talk about culture? And so we said we have to do it. This matters to our audience. They're talking about this. We cannot ignore this. That would be irresponsible. But what's the best way to come at this? The best way is to hand them the mic. Right. And I think sometimes that's the best thing you can do is to find the right voices to amplify. You get out of the way and you let them tell their stories. And it was the single scariest story that I had ever published to that point. Because if it went wrong, it was all on me. Yeah. And if people didn't get it, if they didn't understand the intention or the nuances.
And when the stakes are high, when you get it wrong, you get it so wrong.
Especially on a topic like that, right? And so many people tend to shy away from those topics that are like triggering. But we went there and the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. And not just from those who have felt silenced and felt outraged by cultural appropriation, but people who've never even understood what it was. You know, like, wow, thank you for educating. Thank you for helping me understand this thing that I really didn't understand and I was too afraid to ask. And we realized this is the point. This is what we want to be. We want to be a bridge in the divide. We want to amplify marginalized voices. We want to educate and empower young people. And so that was the first like big win that I felt, where I was just like, okay, we're on the right track. People get it. We can start building trust with this new tribe that we've cultivated. But then the big story is, which I think most of us in this room might have seen because it was crazy, for better or for worse. The story where Lauren Duca, which was one of our weekend columnists online, wrote a story about Trump gaslighting America. And that was that was the torch. We had been doing all this work, shifting our brand and our messaging, but that story made the biggest difference in Teen Vogue's trajectory. I mean, that month, it was December 10th, 16, was my birthday, and I looked at my phone and it was exploding with messages, outrage and also praise. And in that month alone, Teen Vogue sold more subscriptions than we had all year. And then that trend continued, and we realized we have finally hit critical mass. This is our tipping point. And we realized that with that one story, we were able to bring in an even wider group of people that we weren't even aiming for. Like, we had like Trevor Noah calling us, like, Trevor Noah reads Teen Vogue? Like, really? This is cool. Dan Rather's like retweeting Teen Vogue? This is amazing. But that doesn't always happen, and that is important as well to identify. I mean, it's important to do the work, regardless of who's paying attention, and to cultivate your community, even as small or as big as it is.
Well, you know, one of the themes that we were it was in our description was building community consciously. How do you feel like, you know, just for practical tips for someone else, like, how do you feel like you know how to tell when there is space for consciousness raising when you are speaking to the tribe? And because a lot of it to me is like, you know, because especially the nature of the types of things I write, when you write things that are spiritual text, or you understand that nothing's new. You're just finding new ways to say it. And I think especially in these times, there's not we don't have to think we're like reinventing the wheel with anything. That for me as a creative, I just think that it's crucial to say things in a way where people can hear it right now, and finding all of the entry points, all of the different types of entry points for the action or for that call to action. And I think that for some people that it can be intimidating to like, I definitely have the moment where I'm like, can I say it like this? Like, or like, will that do more harm or more good in taking that? Or like, will that raise the consciousness, or will it like have someone like put their heel further in the ground and turn away? And I'm so interested to know like how you thought about that, and like balancing like how you not just choose the story, but like really how and when you shared the story.
I think so much of it is instinctual. I think of someone like a Yara Shahidi as a good example of someone who we identified early on as worthy of passing the mic to. And sometimes, as I said earlier, it's easier for you to hand the mic to someone else to say it than for the brand to say it. It feels more, it's more authentic, and it's important that you're very careful about also who you leverage, who you hand your platform over to. But Yara Shahidi is such a perfect example of this idea of cultivating, first of all, her own voice, and then a tribe that follows her online. And she is someone who I remember following on social media and realizing, like, this girl is brilliant.
She is so smart.
She is
like, when you sit with her, you're just like, I actually don't think I'm smart enough to sit next to you.
You're like, what have I done my whole life?
Yeah.
What am I doing with my life? You are 18 years old and like running circles around me intellectually. And she like quotes.
This is Baldwin. And she'll just,
Baldwin.
and then she's like, you remember that line from that? And it was like,
and you're like,
I'm
note
like,
to self,
I'm like,
watch
yeah.
that YouTube
I'm like,
thing. Get the cliff notes on that book. Okay. So yeah, but Yara Shahidi, at the time, I remember when I found her, I was like, how is this girl not blown up? She is so incredible. And so we were already like operating on this new mandate of just thinking more consciously about who we're going to lend our platform to, and amplifying voices that we found to be important role models and thought leaders for the next generation of young leaders. Somebody else can do the Kardashians. We can find the person no one's talking about and like give them a platform. And Yara Shahidi had a really small role on Blackish as the teenage daughter who's kind of like bratty and obsessed with her phone, and sort of some of these tropes that just were more limiting than the young woman that she is. And we gave her first cover, and I remember like thinking, this girl is way too brilliant. Like we can't, a cover's not even enough. Like we have to get out of the way and let her guest edit the issue. And the more that we allowed her to be who she was in an unfiltered way, the more the world was able to see what young people and young girls have to offer. Like it was about identifying her, giving her the platform, and then seeing the trickle-down effect of how adults started to think differently about young people and about platforms like Teen Vogue. as a default. So, but I guess to answer your question in short, it is instinctual. I don't know that I have like the top 3 things to do to like say the thing that's hard. Like I don't think that it's prescriptive in that way. But I'd be interested to hear from your perspective, because I think with what you do, you're a bridge. You really are a bridge in the divide, and you are empowering as an activist, but you don't ever lead with anger, and you don't ever lead with anything that's divisive. And yet you incite people and you activate people. How do you toe that line?
Well, I think it's also important to remember that it's called, like activism, not reactivism. And so I never create from a reactive space. And I also always think about, and as you can relate, it's like, no matter who it is on the planet who you think is that your enemy or the opposite of everything you think, like that person is somewhere in your family. And so, for me, I recognize that, it's just not helpful for me to only want to sing to my own choir all the time,
right.
and only raise that voice. It's almost like, quality, like an amazing quality of you want an amazing quality in your tribe, but you also want this amazing quantity, because that's how you change the world.
Yeah.
You don't just want to have that one group of people who will just get as loud as you could possibly ever want them to get for you, but everyone else is like, no, they're too, that's too loud for me. And I think that in movements throughout history, we've seen where that cuts movements in half, whether that is in the feminist movement with the burning your bra, and I think that for me, I always wonder, I don't want to water down my opinions or my thoughts, but I do like to leave space for other people to feel capable to jump on board. So I remember recently when I wrote something about the shooting at the school in Florida, and I remember when I was writing it, I was like, I had so much anger and sadness and pain, and but I was like, what do you say that just can make someone actually just think about it a little bit more, rather than being like, you're trying to do this to me or take this from me, or attack me in this way. And I remember saying to myself, I think I wrote it should be hard as hell to get a gun, period. Because I felt like that was actually so much of a more I felt like that could reach so many more people than saying, get all the guns out of America now. That doesn't happen tomorrow. But I think for people to really critically think about yeah, maybe it should just be hard. And I think that is such an entry point into the movement that I believe in, as far as gun control in our country, and in common sense gun safety reform. So yeah, so I think that it's about for me, it's about us having as many entry points to the movement as possible.
And we need different types of activists and different types of movers in different places. And I think it's important to recognize what space you occupy and what lane you're in, and to operate from there. So, but one thing you brought up that I would love to hear your perspective on is sort of the dark side of building a tribe of light would be creating an echo chamber.
Yeah.
Right? What is the difference between a tribe, the type of tribe that we're talking about, and an echo chamber, in your opinion?
That's a really hard question.
I think that the difference is that, and I think that this is where it comes back to the balance of online and in real life, is that for your tribe, you have a promise to them. You have this you have this promise of whatever your promise is to your tribe. For me, my promise to my audience that I make every day before I write anything is, wherever you are in the world and however lonely that feeling might be, I'm writing this for you, I'm looking for you, this is for you. And so I think that, the intention is very different, and also how you activate people. Because a tribe does things, a tribe changes things. And I think that an echo chamber is where you start to kind of cross that line into just the public therapy, and I'm actually really anti that.
Right.
I really, if I don't understand why we are even putting our bodies in a place for a march or doing something, I hold back for a minute. because it's so important to me that like, okay, like what's the action item? Like what do we do with our tribe? Our tribe changes the world. Our tribe shifts culture. Our tribe, you know, makes it better for the next generation. And so I think it's more about how you activate that group. You know, the echo chamber is like, oh, more stuff here. Like, oh, totally, oh, you know, and it's like, I think that there's something so unhelpful about that.
Yeah.
So, and speaking of helpful, they want us to do questions.
Yes.
Okay, you take the first one.
Oh, there
I
are
think it's
questions right in
here.
front. I was like, where are the questions? Are you guys going to ask us questions? Okay. All right. So the
Ivy?
first question from Ivy is, how do you? Okay. How do you create a diverse intersectional space where all walks of life are represented without sounding like you're trying to reach a quota? Well, I guess I can speak to that from my experience at Teen Vogue. I think that first what we did is identify what was missing in the marketplace and what we felt we had to say. And I think from there we identified that we needed to make sure that our masthead was representative of all of the communities we were trying to reach in a meaningful way. And we recognized the responsibility that we had to do that. Before telling these stories, we have to make sure that they're coming from an authentic place. So we just sort of opened up the pipeline a bit, and we started to be more critical about the makeup of our team and the storytellers behind the scenes and the freelancers that we commissioned to make sure that we were as inclusive as possible every step of the way in the creation of our platform and every story that we told. And so it wasn't this sort of like mathematical calculation. It wasn't like we need you know, one person from this place and it wasn't at all that way, but it sort of it all flowed from the intention. And the intention was to become a more inclusive platform with stories that were more intersectional. And I think, you know, from the intention, everything flows. That's an Oprah-ism that I love. What would you say?
You know, I think that it's just crucial that we introduce, especially the shifts in our culture right now, as new normals. So I think that even when we say words like being inclusive, there's a part of us that is still saying that, you know, there's a standard that we're working within to make the standard better, when really I think we've thrown the standard out of the window and we're building a whole new world that actually represents a safer space for marginalized groups of people. And I think that we're, for the first time, not just, and I think that that's what Teen Vogue did so well, and I think that's why you don't have that mathematical equation, is because you didn't say like, okay, we're in these standards and now we'll pull this person into it to shake it up or move this around and make space for people. You were actually like, okay, we're gonna create a whole new space where it naturally flows that these people are here, because this is the new normal, this is what's real. And I think about that a lot actually when we talk about, you know, men in this current time, who are, you know, I speak to so many men who are like, I just feel really uncomfortable all the time because the Me Too movement has put so many men in a defensive place or an uncomfortable place. And I was like, but the new normal is that like you might just be uncomfortable for a while.
Right.
And we've been uncomfortable our entire lives generationally. And so I think that, you know, it's so important to like say like, you know, generationally, like masculinity has not been getting it right.
Right.
So we're not actually trying to make masculinity work better. We're trying to like introduce divine masculinity that like actually like makes this world a better place. And so I think that that's why I'm always like scared of words like inclusive or like adding diversity. And I'm like, for some reason, it always makes me feel like I'm working within the systems. And what I love so much about how we create and how we make and how we do things is that it's like, no, I don't. I unsubscribe from that system. I don't co-sign that. I'm not including anyone in these previous ways of thinking. I'm creating the new world that is right and better.
Right. Amen. I love that. I love that. And one thing that I just thought of is that, you know, you also can't be afraid, as you say, you can't be afraid to be uncomfortable or to make other people feel uncomfortable. Like, in order to disrupt systems and create new models, you're going to have to agitate, and agitation is uncomfortable for people who have always done things a certain way. And I think that's the biggest takeaway that I've had from working with so many young people is just like their fearlessness in terms of being comfortable making other people uncomfortable. It's almost a necessary part of progress. You know?
Change is uncomfortable, but it's the only way. And I mean, listen, it's why it's called growing pains, not growing pleasures.
Right.
Like, we are, I think, going through a lot of growing pains as a society right now in America, and I think that we should be looking at that as something that's really exciting. Like, yes, these things, it's uncomfortable and it's painful and it's bringing up so much that we've generationally traumatized us, but that's how we actually know we're growing.
Yep.
If we were still just cruising, like this would not be a growth point. And I think that if there's anything that this past year has brought about is the realization for how much growth our country requires of us right now. Okay, we're gonna take another question.
You
which
choose
one
this
do we
one.
choose?
You choose this one. Let's do call out culture.
Or you do it. Which one? I can kind of see, but there's like this weird glare.
Oh, I got you. I have big, thick glasses.
Okay.
I'm ready for this. Okay, so, I was gonna choose the one about call out culture. Okay, online call out culture is becoming oppressive. Much learning comes from recognizing and leveling with mistakes. How can we create safe spaces for that online? Ooh, that is such a good question. I don't know who Win Mixter, that was an amazing question. Cleo. How do you see call out culture in the community that you foster online? Do you see much of that?
I do. Actually, I don't know that I do in my space, that like in the space I create, but I definitely see it I definitely feel like I do see it everywhere. And, I think that it brings it back to the conversation we're having about allowing people to feel capable and giving them space. Like we need people to feel like they have the space to evolve. And I think that in order to do that, we have to recognize that, where most of us are. I mean, the things I thought 5 years ago, the things I believed 10 years ago, the things I thought were so true 15 years ago horrify me now. And I think that, I have a friend of mine, like some of the best advice she ever gave me was, she said, I'm not in the business of holding anyone's moment against them. And I was like, and I remember when she said it, because I was in that moment in the business of holding someone's moment against them. And I remember saying to her, I was like, wow, that is so profound, because it allows you the space to be like, ask more questions, like ask that person more. And I think that when we approach each other thinking like, this is the answer and this is the solution, period, rather than ... like we need that space, because people do want to do better and we're scared. And it takes a lot to even like put ourselves out there. And I think that there's such incredible ways to even disagree with each other lovingly. I remember one time someone said to me, like, I don't really get a lot of people on my page that are like troll people. And but someone said he was like the meanest thing anyone ever said to me, but it was like, Cleo, I literally never agree with anything you think politically, but there's no doubt in my mind you're a really good person. I was like, can we all just like know that that is like how you talk to someone about like how you're disagreeing? I think I was like posting something about like my love of Planned Parenthood, and I was like, I respected that so much though. And it also like, even in a moment where someone's rejecting me, I was able to like tap into like our own, like a commonality we could have. And I didn't have to sit there and be like, you psycho, you know what I mean? I didn't have to turn my back on that person. And I think that the problem with call out culture in that way is that, we can't, people cannot feel like every time they don't get it right, their entire community is going to turn their back on them. We need to have each other's back, especially in this time, and push for each other's personal evolutions, and just ask more and give more space to them to get there.
That's so well put. I'm not even going to add anything to that. That was perfect.
So
We have time for maybe
one more question.
Yeah. You choose. Can you see?
I can, like, it's so weird. I can see like half of it.
clock is ticking. We have
I'm so sorry.
60
Okay.
seconds left. Let's see.
How do you empower your tribe members to feel as equally empowered and confident outside of your safe space as they do in your safe space? Oh, that's a good question. I feel like we did a live conversation about self-love and healing yesterday together. And one of the things we encouraged all of the people who came to the conversation to do after is create their own spaces. So I think that, great leaders empower everyone else around them to be great leaders. And so for me, every time, I don't think anyone should rely on my safe space to be their only safe space. I think that the best you can do as someone who does create brave spaces and does create safe spaces is encourage people to know that they have the power to do that as well. And we had so many women last night who, I think every time I have a book signing or do anything, it's we have so many people who are we just started a women's group here. We were in line together and we got together and now we're gonna go and do these things. And I think that encouraging people to know that they have the power to do that is so critical.
Yeah, I think that's the point, right? It's a platform that we're creating, and the idea is that you're bringing together like-minded people who care about similar things, who share similar values, and 9 times they might have come for you or for Teen Vogue or for whatever the book, but really what's going to keep them in the tribe are the sisters that they meet or the people that they meet along the way. And there's nothing more beautiful or fulfilling or rewarding than to see the people that are enjoying the work that you're putting out into the world, usually this way, come together, put their phones down, and start creating those macro connections in real life. And really, I think we're just sort of conduits for bringing people one step closer to the people that they're meant to be and the people that they're meant to be in community with.
Yes.
Right?
And I think that, the best gift that you can give your tribe that they can always take with them is the love, is the love and the connections with each other. And then the work it starts to do itself. You don't have to worry about hey guys, did you do that?
No, they start building micro groups among themselves. When I remember when we did Teen Vogue Summit, the best part of it was seeing that by the end there were these committees that had formed, and they were we're starting a feminist group, and we've already launched our own page, and we're going to be talking, we're going to carry this out, and we're going to come to you with suggestions for what you guys should be doing at Teen Vogue. I'm yes, please. Book clubs formed out of that, and that is the whole point, is to create connections online, bring people together in real life so that they can build these communities in their own lives.
Well, and to encourage lifelong connections.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the times what's happening now is that, especially with brands, are so focused on getting as powerful or growing as much as they can in a short span of time to then sell it and get rid of it and move on to the next thing, that we're really forgetting that there are spaces and places that people invested their entire lives into. My mom had brands that she wore her whole life. And I think that as far as when we think, I think try to think that we're these transient beings, or especially as women, they love to tell you anytime someone's oh my God, you're having a moment right now. I'm no, I'm having a life. And you're so used to feeling you better capitalize off of this thing, rather than saying well, what does it look like for us to be together for life? And what do I need to give you for you to want to roll with me always? And I think that the type of love and authenticity and bravery and vulnerability and the variety of connections that that make that work are that's the magic sauce.
Beautifully said. And on that note, thank you.
I love
you.
you,
Thank you, Cleo. I love you. This was awesome. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
That was awesome.